So, kind of just wanted to change topics here because I kind of just wanted to relax a bit instead of doing daily streams like that. This is essentially my day where I'm switching tracks. And I kind of just wanted to talk about the site. And for those of you who don't really know, this is essentially where I'm kind of just putting a bunch of different write-ups for things that won't really fit on stream or something. Hello, Wraith. I'm alright. Um, so I kind of just wanted to talk about this a little, I guess, as a different subject for like a little while. Um, I haven't written this anything here at all, aside from notes on what to include as a kind of list. So I can still scroll through this, but this is essentially going to be a write-up on how you can become a VTuber yourself, which is something I've been meaning to write about for a while, even as just a list, but I just never got around to it. Um, and yeah, I have a specific approach. I'm going to try to not do a lot of detail because it's obviously there's actually a lot, and if I go in too much detail, it's going to be overwhelming. So it's really meant to just point you in the right direction and kind of give you an idea of where to start. Um, and I'm doing it in from the approach of you needing three different things, three different areas. That's hardware, software, and some kind of asset, which is the model. Um, I kept thinking about how to approach the subject. The reason why I never did it is because I wanted to do a video, and I'm not really good at doing scripted videos. So, that's why I've done stuff on stream like this a couple times as a kind of really improvised tutorial. So I'm kind of just going to scroll through this and see what I can say. Um, and that'll essentially be, you know, what I'll be going over for the next 10 minutes or something. The idea of these three categories is hardware, software, and the model is to kind of really distill down what you need to do the VTuber thing. It could be more complicated than that. It could be less, but generally you need to have three different areas prepared. That's the physical hardware itself to capture you, the software to process that, which is the rendering software, and also obviously a model and any other assets you want. Pretty simple set of three things. And then I kind of go through what's available and all of the different options in all three areas, going from least expensive and least effort to most expensive and most effort required. And I'm trying to put it in a certain order. And I've more or less just made nothing but a bunch of headings and URLs. It's possible that I could just straight up write a few things and then publish this, or I could go in more detail summarizing every link. I'm not sure where to go yet. But here, you can actually be a VTuber with nothing at all. That is actually a possibility. Because there is actually because you can just have an avatar on screen that has no relation to your face. You can script certain actions. I don't know everything, but you can make your avatar do certain movements following your keyboard and mouse or your gamepad. So that's an option. The next step up is to have a webcam. Everyone has a webcam. I have a very cheap and old webcam, so that's actually pretty low cost. The next step up from that is to have something augmenting your webcam, so some kind of motion capture, mainly having to do with depth fencing. So the first version of this was really the Kinect, but the Kinect is obsolete, and there are two different technologies which use the same principles in high fidelity. That's Leap Motion and RealSense. Both of them use the same kind of idea of sensing depth, and then it interprets that into your hands. So this is mainly just for having hands and a little bit of body motion. And just a bunch of links and descriptions. Like for example, leap motion, there's a few different places where you can put it. There's also one option is to put it on your chest to make it point outwards, and then you could detect your hands. That way, if you can see your hands, you know that it's being detected. RealSense by Intel is just a standard, you put on your desk thing. And yeah, next step up is using virtual reality technology as a form of motion capture. This is separate from more higher level motion capture, like studio level, because VR it's using similar principles, but it's meant to be inexpensive, and there's only 3 points of reference at minimum, both of your hands and your head. So the it's also like accessible to consumers, so a lot of people have access to this. So a lot of people like you can even see it in games like Boneworks or something, where they do a lot of inverse kinematics and forward kinematics work to make your body look like it's moving naturally using only 3 points of reference, which is the location, the three-dimensional location of your head and two hands. And this is accessible to a lot of people. The next step up from that is essentially studio level motion capture, where instead of having only 3 points of 3D tracking, you have as many as you need. The perception neuron is the most inexpensive one of its type, which is at the same cost as a VR headset, as a Valve Index, actually. And you have essentially 20 different tracking points that you can put on your body, and then you assign them to your skeleton. A middle ground of that would be at getting the HTC Vive trackers. So some VTubers have done that. So instead of wearing a headset, they just put a Vive tracker on their head, and they have 3 points of reference, I think, and they might have more for their feet. There's also DIY methods where you can get Switch controllers and put them on your feet, but that's really out of the range of this article that I'd like to cover, because that's more DIY stuff. I'm talking about easily accessible stuff, mainly. Am I talking too quickly? Yeah, it's well, you need lots of different capture points. So you can, I mean, if you really wanted to do DIY, you would just use absolutely everything you can get and just put it on your body. So I have not mentioned the Kinect here, but the Kinect would give us general location of your body, and then you would need, yeah, and then you would combine that with, say, the virtual reality stuff, which is the next generation after that, to get more precise locations. And then you could use Wii remotes if you really wanted to, as well. But that's all previous generation stuff, very DIY and not compatible anymore. So that's why I haven't mentioned it. But before, but yeah, there are drivers to interpret the Kinect as certain three-dimensional capture points. So that's an option as well if you really wanted to. But that's really, really messy and rough. Software, there is actually, so for hardware, there's essentially just 4 different levels of complexity, with the most accessible one being webcam. Webcam is what I use, and this YouTube video here is essentially the starting point of VTubers from 2012, because a university in Japan did this in the lab in 2012. That was 8 years ago. And then a year later, Facebook became a thing, and that's VTubers only started becoming a thing in 2018. So it's just an interesting bit of history here, to see that VTubers have had the ability to exist since the year 2012, but it's never really been become a thing um, until very recently. It was even using Miku and MMD, so the precedent has existed for a long time. It just didn't really have a lot of momentum. Software, I've separated it into two categories. One is based on VRM and one is not. That is because in 2018, essentially what happened when the VTuber thing started becoming a thing is that the community kind of came together and established a standard that became VRM. So that's mainly the Japanese community, so pretty much every bit of VTuber software after 2018 is based on VRM, and everything from before that is from before. It does not use VRM, and instead you need to create everything from scratch. And I've and non-VRM stuff would be more difficult, but since it's a shorter list, I decided to put it first. And there are essentially four different things that you can do, all three, depending. So the most classic one, the most common one rather, is to use FaceRig with the Live 2D module. And the main thing here is that Live 2D is the part that you need to make from scratch. Suva is I don't really know anything about this aside from the fact that it comes from the VR chat community, and it's not based on VRM at all. It's based on people importing models into VR chat. So if you can import your model into VR chat, you can put it into Suva because it's built for that community. For FaceRig, you can have Scratch models, Scratch 3D models, or you can use the module to do Live 2D. For Suva, you also need Scratch models, but there's enough of a community there based on MMD and VR chat that you can put models in here with less effort than FaceRig, but it's still not based on VRM, so you still need to make things from scratch. The Adobe Character Animator is actually something you can do to become a VTuber as well. It uses face capture similar to Live 2D and FaceRig to animate a character in real time in Adobe software. And FaceRig and Suva, they're essentially amateur developments. But Adobe Character Animator is actually what people use professionally, because that's part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. So there were two particular promotional events that happened. One where Rick and Morty streamed on Twitch, fully animated, and one where Homer Simpson streamed on YouTube, I believe. And both of them were done with the Adobe Character Animator. It's essentially a live puppetry program where you can pre-program animations and you can just play them on command with a soundboard or a switchboard. It's much closer to puppetry like that. So this is a completely different program from any Adobe program. It's another one, but yeah, it can do stuff completely live, and it has face capture now. So this is another option that you can do if you don't want to do Live 2D. But this is the case where you would need to do your art from scratch and arrange it. So if you have, I believe if you have experience in Flash, you can transfer your skills to this because you would need to build the character in the same way with structural elements. You can sort of transfer that to Live 2D as well. 3tenor Pro, there are actually 4 different versions of 3tenor, so this is going to come up a lot more. But the Pro version with the Live 2D license, it is essentially just face capture with Live 2D. So that's another option if you don't want to use FaceFake. Everything after this is about VRM in this section. VDraw, this is the one where you don't need anything at all, because it just puts your model on screen, and following your keyboard and mouse or your gamepad or drawing tablet, it will move your character around. So it does not do anything with your head, but it will look like you're drawing on a canvas, or you're just playing with your controller. You're just sitting there looking at the screen. So that's if you don't have a webcam at all, or if you don't want to. For webcam stuff, Hitogata is what I'm using at the moment, and it was originally a program for MMD stuff. I think it could support that, but VRM was added recently, and it kind of just captures your face. I really like the movement, and it uses I really like the movement interpretation, and the fact that it is actually coded from scratch, it seems, so with its own rendering engine. So it actually has a lower hardware footprint. So that's why I kind of picked this. It's not really supported anymore. I haven't seen an update in a couple of years, but since it's the one that I use, I listed it here. There are actually significantly more programs outside of this list, but these are really the only ones that are worth looking at, because I think many of them don't work, or they haven't been updated, and I've looked at many of them when I was starting out. 3tenor is here again. There are 4 different versions for 3tenor, and they support different levels of hardware. So once you go up to a higher version, like from the free version to the pro version, it supports all the previous stuff and new stuff. So the free version supports your webcam and Leap Motion, and it's on Steam. Wakaru is odd. I'm not sure about it being updated recently, but it has some weird system where some kind of experimental system where it does, instead of using Leap Motion, it actually tracks your hand with the webcam with a marker. So if you have some kind of marker in your hand, a colored marker, it will actually track your hand movement. I have never gotten it to work, but it's kind of interesting. Lupit is purely camera and Leap Motion again, and this is what the majority of English VTubers use. I have not used this at all, aside from a short trial, because I actually did not like it personally. Yeah, and also I'm just including 3tenor again because that's a separate version, Pro version plus Live 2D. In particular, if you just want Live 2D, you can just have your webcam. It will only require your webcam. This is kind of long, isn't it? Everything here, from 3tenor to Lapid, they all use Unity with 3tenor, Wakaru, Lapid. Most of them use Unity. That's kind of why I decided not to use them, because I originally started on an old computer, and I needed to reduce my hardware footprint as much as possible, and running Unity was absolutely out of the question. That was why I chose Hitogata. I keep thinking about moving to a new one, a different one, but I have not really found one I liked. And, well, there isn't really much of a benefit, because I only still have my webcam. Using virtual reality, I have not really explored this that much, even though I just got the VR headset. But this is essentially using 3 points of tracking. Many of these, they kind of have different things, and they do different things at different levels. So 310 Pro, I don't have it, but it supports a few different things. It would also support your phone as well as a camera if you wanted to do that instead of a webcam. Virtual motion capture is what I've been using, and it kind of just puts a copy of your avatar on screen for moving around. Live is the same, and this is actually a Western development for once. And it's actually originally for overlaying actual camera footage into VR games. So it looks like, you know, you can have a third-person camera, but it's also supported. It also has now supported VRM. So this is apparently very good. I have barely looked at it, but it really is tuned specifically for getting third-person cameras into VR games and overlaying it properly. It has VRM for that. Virtual motion capture, it kind of just puts a copy of you and on the screen, which is what I've been using. There's no synchronization with what happens in VR. Yeah, virtual cast is a full-fledged room, so you can go into it, you can walk around, you can even connect with other people, and essentially set up your own stage and do shows in there. And yeah, the thing with this though is that there's no direct usage of VRM. You do need to make an account and upload it to a cloud, and then you can actually download whatever you want from other people uploading to the cloud as well. I don't really know anything about smartphones, but there are character creators there. Many of them use the iPhone, the latest iPhone, which has a really, really great face detection camera. And I just decided to list them here for the sake of completion, but I don't own an iPhone. This Reality has a character creator, VIA supports VRM, and 310 Pro it pretty much supports every single level, and this supports the iPhone. So using it as a camera, specifically plugged into your PC, I believe. And then again, 310 comes up again because it supports perception neuron. It's the only one, I think. For the third category, it's mainly about how to create a model. And there's three different areas and three different levels that you can do it. One is to use a character creator. One is to use, it's not quite a character creator as you'd find in an MMORPG, so I've called them enhanced creators. And then you can also just commission someone or just create it yourself. Character creators, it doesn't need much explanation. It's like creating a character in an MMORPG where you just have a character there and you put sliders in. Hirogata actually has an integrated character creator, and I don't really think anyone uses it anymore, but that's an option as well. Vkatsu actually has its own webcam room like mode and its VR mode, but it's all self-contained. So if you want to use a Vkatsu model, you also have to use the VR mode inside of there. So I probably should actually list it here. It is possible actually though, if you really wanted to buy a license, an upload license, and then you can upload it to the cloud specifically for virtual cast. So you can actually have Vkatsu models in virtual cast, but that's the only link it has. It's not completely open. For enhanced stuff, it's partly uses sliders, but you also need to make some stuff yourself. Vroid, I could say a lot about Vroid, but the main thing is that it has sliders to create the model, but you need to texture it yourself. So that means and the main advantage of Vroid is that it significantly reduces or eliminates the need for you to know anything about 3D modeling. All you have to do is know. All you really have to know is how to do texture work. And Vvoid is really where most of the VRM stuff has like circled around, because they've also added like a social site where you could upload stuff to the cloud. It's much more open than Virtualcast, and there are actually lots of programs which log into Vvoid Hub and you can just download stuff. Um, and that's Vvoid is the one that I'm using. So the geometry itself, it was customized with sliders, and there are some basic textures like the skin, um, but everything else I painted myself. Um, there are like templates, but they're essentially blank canvases. So imagine just bunches of white clothing, um, and you can cut them and paint them however you want, and that's essentially what Vvoid is. Um, One thing that does irk me though is that it's not strictly modeling software. It's really meant to not be one, and it kind of eliminates that step. So something that has kind of irked me is that people say that they can do modeling in Vvoid, but that's actually not it. Modeling, like the whole point of Vvoid is that you don't need to do modeling. Miku Miku Dance or MMD models, I know absolutely nothing about. It's based on the Hatsune Miku Vocaloid fanzine, and a lot of people release like jigsaw pieces essentially, and you can find, I don't know where you can find it, but there is a community on DeviantArt, and you essentially assemble it yourself into an MMD, into an MMD model, um, and then you eventually convert it and you can run it into, there are processes in place to put it into VR chat, and then you can put it into server because it uses the same pipeline. A lot of the VR chat community uses MMD, and yeah, I've mainly stayed out of it. There's a big issue as well where copyright ownership is actually in question. So for the most part, um, you can use that, but um, when the VTuber thing started, and the reason why VRM was created was actually seems to be because of how MMD, the current popular thing at the time, uh, did not have any kind of copyright coverage. VRM doesn't have any DRM, but it does have metadata for you to put in ownership information to make sharing much more easier. Um, so yeah, like if you want to do MMD, you can, but I don't actually know where to start, and I would suggest you just go to VRM instead and use that ecosystem. Um, and everything after this, it's not much left here. It's mainly just recommending that, well, like if you can't do a model yourself, you can just pay someone else to do it. And there's even different grades of that as well, because Vvoid essentially created a new level of cottage industry where texture artists with no modeling skills or minimal modeling skills could actually create full models. So you could commission a number of people to make Vvoid models um, for a fairly low price. Um, I could name some people here, but I won't. Other options is to just commission people who do stuff for VR chat, which would be more expensive because they're doing stuff from scratch. Um, and yeah, um, so yeah, I'm not sure what the prices are, but they are generally quite inexpensive if you really wanted that. I wish I could do it. I wish I could do commissions, but I don't really have those skills. Um, yeah. One thing I will say though is um, how should I put this? Um, uh, huh, don't assume that everything is commission. This model I made it myself. It looks good, but I made it myself. So when trying to talk to other people about Void models, don't. Uh, um, yeah, it's kind of is disingenuous the right word? It's kind of disingenuous to assume that everything's a commission, and that you can't actually make your own models. Um, I think that kind of thing has been starting to emerge because of how common Void commissions are becoming now. But the whole basis of Void is that you can just make it yourself, and that's what I did. So please do not assume that I commissioned my model or some people have commissioned their models, um, and you know, kind of check, just check, um, because it really is just meant to make things more open. For Live 2D, um, yeah, the other option is to just make it from scratch. So, and that mainly goes into Live 2D, or you can just make your own 3D model. And that's definitely out of the scope of this article, because if you can make it yourself, you would not be reading this, I guess. You would probably have the skills already, but I will just point to Live 2D as, you know, the way to do the 2D stuff. If you wanted to do a 3D thing yourself, that's where it's out of scope. But yeah, normally it would be Live 2D if you want to convert some 2D art um, into it. How long did saying all that take? I have no idea how I'm going to compress that into like a 3-minute YouTube video or something. Um, yeah, interesting, isn't it?